Hey, home groups. Hope you're having a great week. As you noticed, this week we stepped out of 1 John, and we did that intentionally because sometimes there's events and situations and circumstances that arise that we just need to take a moment and address them from God's Word. And I felt like that was the case with the rising level of fear and uncertainty and confusion about what's going on in the world with Israel and Hamas and the Ukraine war, and everything seems to be turbulent. Everything seems to be chaotic. Is this the end of the world? Is everything spinning out of control? Well, God's Word has much to say about that. And a passage that came to my mind was actually, as I was reading through my devotions this past week, I came across Daniel 4. It's one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite books in the Bible. And in Daniel 4, we are reminded of the sovereignty of God, the providence of God, the majesty and strength and control that God exerts over the universe, over creation, and over the nations of humanity. And I felt like that passage was particularly comforting, to me anyway, and I hope that it was to you as well. So tonight, as you discuss with your home group, you're going to be talking about God's sovereignty. And sometimes the topic of God's sovereignty can be confusing or frightening, and it doesn't need to be. It's meant to be tremendously encouraging and tremendously comforting, and it is for me, and I hope that it now is for you, having listened to this passage from Daniel 4. So as you talk tonight, here's some questions to consider. Number one, what frightens you the most about the chaotic world events happening right now? What is it that scares you the most, and why? Why does it bother you? Why does it unsettle you? Why does it keep you up at night? What is it that's really the root of your fear there? And how can God's truth about His sovereign control of the universe help mitigate that fear? Number two, what aspect of God's sovereignty from this text gives you the most comfort? So which of the 12 expressions or characteristics of God's sovereignty that we looked at in that text, which one comforts you the most? Which one dispels the most fear? Which one gives you the most encouragement as you face these world events? Number three, how can the truth of God's sovereignty help us pray more earnestly? Sometimes when we talk about God's sovereignty, we think, well, that means prayer is meaningless and pointless, and why do we need to do it if God's in control? Prayer is fueled by an understanding of God's sovereignty. So talk about that for a little bit. How can this truth really strengthen prayer, not undercut it? And finally, how does this passage help you thoughtfully engage with the current news cycle regarding the Middle East, regarding Europe, regarding China, regarding any of these scary world events? How does the truth that you have learned this week about God's sovereignty, how does Daniel 4 and what God is saying there, how does that help you thoughtfully, biblically engage with the news? So you should be watching the news. Now, you shouldn't watch it 24/7. I think that can be very discouraging to you. But you need to stay abreast of what's going on. But you need to stay abreast with what's going on from a biblical perspective. Within the thought in mind, God is in control. So as you think about the news and God's sovereignty, how can that text help you thoughtfully engage? So hopefully that provides some good conversation for you guys tonight. Remember, God is on the throne. He's in control, and He's driving history towards a defined end in which He wins, in which we rejoice in paradise, in the new heaven and the new earth forever and ever. It's going to be great. So remember that. Trust the Lord. Trust Jesus. Have a great night.